I went through all the cannabis events and noticed that this is just not the it lacked any real connection.
Yeah.
What I felt to the plant or the community or the people
Yeah.
that introduced this plant to the world. So that's why for me it was about supporting grassroots ganja growers in the Caribbean and Jamaica to get access to the market. Hi, my name is Vivianne Wilson. I'm the founder of GreenPort Cannabis. We're a retail store located in Toronto, Canada. And welcome to the Ganjha show.
That's amazing. Thank you, Vivian, for coming on the show. Let's just jump right into it. So you own a cannabis store. How's that experience? Like, most of my audience is kind of in India right now.
Right.
It's like a foreign concept. Like, you can buy and go into a store. How does that feel like doing it legally now?
I mean, I think it's turning out to be like a regular retail business with a lot of hurdles.
Yeah.
It's the same idea. People can come in, they see the products, they can't touch it, they can only see the packaging, it has to be locked. So there's a lot of rules and regulations in regards to the experience that the consumer can have with the cannabis before buying it. But a lot of the experience from a retail perspective is the same, that they come in, they see the product, and they shop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing. Like, I've been working in retail recently. I came to Canada like not even a year ago. So it's a different concept altogether. Even buying alcohol in India is it's more regulated. You can't really like how we have LCBOs. They don't have
Yeah.
showrooms or anything.
Right.
It's just like just a shop, like a pop-up kind of a thing, and you just buy it from there. Yeah, but let's take a step back and can you share something about how you got into cannabis in the first place?
Well, I mean, for me, it was the fact that Canada is legalizing this industry and being the first and a leader in what's a very controversial business.
Yeah.
But then when you look at the space, you realize that there was a lack of representation in the industry, and there was nothing considered in regards to repairing any of the damage done in communities, including the false narratives and false information that had been spread about this plant in the communities that utilized it for thousands of years. And so that was something that I really became evident to me as I went through all the cannabis events and noticed that this is just not the it lacked any real connection.
Yeah.
What I felt to the plant or the community or the people that introduced this plant to the world. So that's why for me it was about supporting grassroots ganja growers in the Caribbean and Jamaica to get access to the market. And we had to pivot during the pandemic to and then opened up a retail space before the pandemic, actually. But during the pandemic is when we actually opened up our first retail location.
Yeah. Did you see, like, because it got legalized, do you see a lot of corporatization? Like, I have seen a lot of CEOs of like big growing companies. They're like legacy, like not in terms of like legacy in cannabis. Legacy, what I mean is like they being a CEO for like a CPG brand, or like they just handle a brand before, now they're just handling another brand in cannabis, like treating it in the same way like a product, which is just like you said, it's retail, but it has so much more history, culture behind it, which they don't care about.
Right. And I think that's a fair assessment, right? Most of the industry, especially when I was trying to get my license, and it took almost a year for me to be able to license as setting up a store, carrying all these costs for a year, and you would see a lot of corporations opening up multiple locations. At one point in time, they owned around 60% of all the cannabis stores that were first out the gate. So they got that first mover advantage. And I mean, almost 2 years later, you're seeing the effects of that, because there's a significant amount of money that has been lost because of that disconnect from the plant, from the community, from awareness of who the users are. And so they're feeling the effects of that. And so you're going to see that model may change a bit because they initially thought you just throw money at it, shut people down, and that they would be winning this, this green rush, but that has not been the case.
Yeah. Just talking about the green rush and like the legacy side of it. Before it got legalized, people were still buying from legacy market. There were certain stores and like all across Canada. Some of them still are. Since now you own a legal Ontario authorized store, do you see them as a competition? Do you see them as unfair advantage? What do you see them as?
I personally, I don't see the legacy market the way that I think a lot of the government had initially established our program to see them as competition, or what some other retails will say. I don't see that, because I don't think that they should have been excluded
Yeah.
from the market to begin with, because
Yeah.
a lot of the people who were in the legacy market were the ones pushing to get it legalized. And because they may have had criminal records, or they may have had experience, or people knew they were running the illegal market, because of that, it would have made it even more difficult for them to have gotten into the legal space, or impossible for them to get into the legal space. So I think that there should have been room and exceptions and opportunities made for the legacy market to join the legal market, especially for people within the Black or Indigenous communities who were heavily criminalized. We've seen the data that demonstrates that they were arrested and served time 6, sometimes 12 times more likely than any other community. So those types of programs should have been established to support those communities, to make sure that they're able to participate in the legal market. And it wasn't. And to me, that's a huge miss for the industry. It's a huge hypocritical, I think, statement when the government says that we're trying to get rid of the illegal market. The best way to do that is to bring them into the fold, into the legal space. So their quote unquote goal, to me, was always meant to mislead their actual initiative that they were going for.
Yeah. So initially, while policy making, they were excluded. Now, have you seen talks in terms of policy making of getting them in the market now? Or for as long as I have seen, like the reports and stuff that the provincial government gives us, they just talk about like fighting the illicit market.
Right.
Like, how do we keep fighting something which is not even there, right? Like this plant is decriminalized. Everyone can grow their own plants. Like everything is out there in the open. People know it's legal now. So why do we have to keep fighting them? Like,
and I mean, I know which report you're talking about is that Ontario Cannabis report that comes out, and they always say, you know, we're now 50, we've taken over 50% of the illegal market. And I said, how do you know that? How can you measure, like you said, something that is not there? They're not paying taxes, right? They're not reporting their revenue to you. So you absolutely can't. It's like you're chasing a ghost, which to me is a waste of resources. The resources should be spent educating people about the plant, demystifying it, and them repairing the damage done based on the false information that was put out about all these communities and all these communities and people that were using these plants for thousands of years. I mean, when you think about even the name Ganjha and where it came from, and Jamaica has a strong culture in regards to cannabis, but that name was brought over from the indentured servants that came from India to Jamaica. So that type of history, that type of knowledge, that kind of pride, I would say, that people could have, knowing that, you know what, we were right all along, because this plant is now being studied to treat so many different ailments. These people who weren't as educated, so to speak, and I'm using quotations here, had the right level of knowledge that they needed to help each other and to treat ailments that they were having in a more natural way. So to me, that's where a lot of the resources needs to go to help us alleviate a lot of that stigma and false information that was perpetuated for over a century.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like there's a lot of westernization, I would say. Like they take stuff away from like Africa, Southeast Asia, and they try and modernize it and then sell back to them. That's how British did it. I know India, Jamaica, all of that. We have like experienced that British part of it. But like in India and I guess in Jamaica too, it like grows openly, naturally. I know there's people growing it themselves, but in the mountains, thousands of years ago, nobody was growing them. There's still areas that you can go to where nobody has ever been, like no human population, and you still see cannabis plants there. So that means that it had a different origin. Now India's struggling to like legalize it. No, it's a political issue. Current government doesn't want to legalize it, but you see the West like making so much money
Money.
off of the tax dollars. Let's get back to the retail side of things now. What challenges have you seen for people? Let's talk about the illicit market also. Like they were used to like buying things a certain way, but now they cannot in the legal market. Is there one of the hindrance that's stopping them to buy from us, or?
So the illicit market can't buy from as a retailer, a legal retailer, we buy from the government. The government buys from licensed growers. So that's the supply chain that we have to follow. So the illicit market are still getting their things from their usual or dealers that they've been getting the plants from.
Yeah. What in terms of customers do you think should change in the now legal market that would like encourage a lot of people to participate in the legal industry instead of going back to the legacy one?
I think it's convenience. A
Yeah.
lot of consumers are coming to the legal store because it's just easier. You don't have to wait for your dealer. In Toronto, there's a cannabis store on every block.
Yeah.
So they don't have to go far.
Yeah.
So I think the part of the reason why people are transitioning to the legal space is just simply convenience. The products on the legal side have dramatically improved since when they first rolled out.
Yeah.
And that's because a lot of the newer products are growing in smaller micro grows.
Yeah.
And the larger companies are buying from those people and putting it to the market. So the product quality has improved and prices have come down significantly.
Yeah. Just talking about the pricing, we face this a lot, especially in Toronto right now because there's too many stores. And recently a report came in by, I think, Deloitte and EY, where it said like any legal weed that's getting sold right now, 50% of it goes to the government, either in taxes or excise duty or other pre-taxes that the LPs have to pay. What do you think about that when they want to combat the illicit market, reduce the prices, but then take 50% of the share right away?
And that just goes to the hypocrisy of their main goal.
Yeah.
What they said when they were trying to legalize is to get rid of the illegal market. And you're 100% right. If you really wanted to get rid of them, you bring them into the fold and you lower the prices so much that they're not able to compete. So the fact that they're taking 50% from it goes to show that this was never their real intent. Anyways, but it also is, it's really sad because we're charging consumers far more than we actually need to, right? Because a lot of it is going into taxes. Because when I buy the product from the government, I pay taxes on that.
Yeah.
Then I have to mark it up to make profit. Then when the consumer comes in and buys it, they pay taxes on that, right? And then of course, when the LP sells it, they're paying taxes on that. So there's a considerable amount of taxes that's being added, and that's eventually being paid by the consumer. I think there's better ways to address it. And if the government does insist on taking these taxes, then we should be able to see where that money is going and the repair that's being done within the industry, within the cannabis industry itself. How are they benefiting the cannabis industry? Is it from education, from research, from repairing previous damage done in certain communities? Those are the types of things that we haven't been seeing at all in regards to the tax spend.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, yeah. Like retailers, how they get a report of saying how much the market is growing, they should also get a report saying, oh, this is where the money is going.
Right.
In the community. Just talking about community in general, like what initiatives have you guys taken in terms of being a retail store to promote like responsible use or like involve the community and educate them?
Well, for us, when we opened up during the pandemic, so it was extremely hard to reach people. But once our restrictions started lifting, we have events all the time, community events. Like at the beginning of May or mid-May, we had a barbecue outside the store where we invited the community. It was, team members were out there, hamburgers, hot dogs, and music, DJs. So we're always having events showcasing local talent. We have education sessions where we bring in people to talk about sex and cannabis, for example, what would be considered two very taboo topics, bringing them together. This June 11th, we're having a cannabis mixer where we're bringing people who want to be able to come in as cannabis users, but also kind of curious people who want to learn more about it. But for me, it's not about, as a retailer, it's not about pushing people to use
Yeah.
and say, you know, buy, get high. It's really about understanding understanding themselves, why they need to use this plant, the benefits of using it, and any risks or potential risks of using the plant. So it's definitely more of a conversation. It's more of, you know, you're talking to, I was going to say a friend, but you definitely don't want to talk to her. It's more like you're talking to grandma who's been using this plant for so long, who can educate you and provide some guidance. That's the way I see it, because my first education about the plant was through that level of knowledge, right? It was through a grandmother who, you know, boils the plant for whatever benefit or uses it for any type of pain relief. That's my foundational knowledge. So that's the way I see it. And that's what we try to present to our consumer. Even though we can't talk about it from a health and wellness perspective, it's still something that we talk about beyond just getting high. It's just looking at your body, what it can do, and how you want to use it.
Yeah. I mean, believe it or not, but I also got my first experience on cannabis through my grandfather. He was like making this religious drink on like a festival in India, which like, it's a huge festival. Like half of the population is kind of Hindu, so they all celebrate this festival.
Yeah.
So like imagine 500 million people, like on that specific day, it's legal to consume cannabis.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Everyone looks the other way. In some states it's legal, some states it's not, but everyone kind of looks the other way. And I mean, we have like roots like in cannabis, like it's all over our culture, religion, all of that, but they kind of overlook it and like I said, kind of modernizing it.
Yeah.
Which is maybe okay, but it gets away from what we are actually trying to achieve, which is like uplifting the communities, the farmers who are actually growing it, and not like all these greenhouses like we see here in Canada.
Yeah.
Just talking about restrictions and challenges in retail, what do you think are like pressing issues like right now and like in future? Like I hear a lot of people saying, oh, I'm going to order a pound of BC, all of that. You can't do that here, obviously. Retail settings, and a pound might be just too reach. But right now, do you think the ounce limit should be increased? Do you think the THC limit in edible should be increased? All of that. What?
Gosh, I mean, I definitely think that there should be more opportunity to educate people about the use of the plant in all formats. I don't think that just making it higher is going to be the solution, because then you may have, because a lot of our consumers come in and they talk about their negative experience with edibles because of that lack of understanding about the higher dosing. So I think that if the government's going to increase it, they also need to put out more awareness, not the scare tactics, not the if you use it, this is what's going to happen, but an actual knowledge and awareness and education in regards to the dosing. Allow LPs to put the producers to put dosing information. Right now, there's nothing on it. There's nothing there to say, okay, use 1 ml, use 1 milligram. So if you're going to increase it, at least increase the knowledge so that people can use and consume safely, so they don't have, they can avoid adverse effects.
And that's a pretty good point. I see so many customers coming in and they're like, I use this for sleep. Obviously, we can't talk about that. But for example, if they increase the limit and the customer doesn't know about it, they would just be taking double, triple, whatever the dose is, without even knowing. Because it's except from like the retailers or bud tenders, nobody really knows what 10 milligram, 20 milligram like is. They just want to take their one gummy. So it's so much more different from a consumer's perspective that I think you're right. Like the government is missing out on like the education part.
A huge miss.
Before we end this conversation, like what do you see the government should do to help the retailers now on the provincial level at least? Because I saw in Alberta they closed down their online retail portal by the government, obviously because they were making losses, but so that the retailers could start doing deliveries, which wasn't the case before. Now it's the case in Ontario because of the COVID, but they extended it. But do you think the OCS retail part should exist, or?
they're a competitor.
Yeah.
And they are a competitor that has all my details and every other retail dealer sales information. So they're not even a real competitor in that sense.
Yeah.
They, I think that was a temporary process that needed to be in place until retail stores were set up. But once retail stores were established, they should have shut that online system down. They're actually taking our retailer money to put into selling products at cheaper prices than our retail. So there's a huge conflict of interest there. So that online service should be dramatically reduced, especially for areas where there are enough stores. I understand if there are regions where they don't have enough stores and they need to ship, then restrict shipping and delivery for those areas. I think that also one of the things that they need to do is, of course, reduce the amount of taxes and the amount of markups that they place on the products. Allow us to be able to, since 90% plus of the sales is happening in retail stores, give us an opportunity to fairly thrive in the market. We've been operating during a pandemic for the last 2 years, which has impacted all retail business, including cannabis businesses, especially downtown Toronto. So there should be an opportunity to allow for them to remove a lot of the costs that they have implemented, put onto the plant, and allow cannabis retailers and, LPs here to thrive as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're extremely right. Like, just competing with the government, who is also a wholesaler, is kind of like unfair.
Huge conflict.
And I don't know why, like, there's not a lot of like conversations around it, maybe internally, but nobody's kind of speaking up about all of these things. So I hope like at least this part of the conversation goes to the right people and there's some more conversations going on. But I just want to say, like, coming from a country where it's illegal, it's still like everyone should be grateful. And obviously all of us here are, that we have to participate legally, enjoy all of these things. And I think there should be more like funding in terms of putting back into the community. People who have been hurt, like, nobody can get licensed right now if they have a criminal record.
Right.
So, but it was criminal record because it was illegal before. There's a lot of mismatch there.
Yeah. But even I know that some people will say, yes, you're committing an illegal act beforehand. But in reality, if you look back in the 70s or 50s, it was illegal to not grow hemp. So they switched the laws to make it illegal. It was legal before. And then they targeted specific communities. So if you were targeting everyone equally, then we have no dispute, right? Okay, you were targeting everyone fairly and equally, but they weren't doing that. So that's the concern that I have with that. And now we're legalized, and you've done nothing to address the fact that that type of unfairness did exist. So, like you said, that's why I joined the industry, because Canada was being a leader in this space. But I think that if they don't address some of these major pain points that we're having, we're going to lose that first mover advantage that we have. Because once countries like India gets licensed and it becomes legalized, we already know what's going to happen. The ability for them to grow far surpasses anything that Canada can do. So we need to specialize in something so that people are going to say, no, we're going to buy Canadian stuff because of this. Because once other countries that can mass produce this and grow it for way cheaper, we're waiting on countries like Colombia to get involved. And once countries like India gets involved, it changes the game completely. So that lead that they once had is dramatically reducing all the time. And it's going to go to a point where we cannot make money growing it here in Canada. So they do need to be far more strategic and thinking 5-10 years out, instead of right now trying to tax it and making as much money as they possibly can today.
Well, it was great talking to you, Vivianne. Thank you so much for coming on. All the great insights, and all of us hope that cannabis obviously grows much more here in Canada.
Excellent. Thank you so much.